In addition to audio editing, Nuendo provides powerful capabilities for editing MIDI events. The editors provide not only a very visual representation of your MIDI notes, but it also aids you in performing some of the most detailed editing you would ever need for your MIDI data. In this tutorial, we'll take a close look at the MIDI editor windows and the features that it provides for you. Nuendo offers 4 different types of editors for your MIDI editing. Each one can be accessed in one of 2 ways. First is by double-clicking on an event, which will bring up the default editor that you choose within the editing preferences. The second method is by accessing the context menu on a specific MIDI event that you have selected, and choosing one of the 4 editors that you'll find within the MIDI category. The first editor is the main key editor, which provides you a piano-style layout of the notes that are entered, as well as the ability to view controller data like velocity, modulation, volume, and more. The second editor is the score editor. Here you're provided with a traditional score layout and musical notation of the MIDI data you have entered. This is very useful if you need to provide a complete notation-based score to an orchestra or other live musicians based on the recorded MIDI events you have in your project. Third is a drum editor, which is a drum-style grid editor that provides you with a list of each drum sound or assigned note on your keyboard and allows you to input these as triggers on a grid, based on a quantization mode. This enhances your ability to program anything from simple beats to complex polyrhythmic percussion lines. It also acts as a great editing tool for drum beats you've programmed by hand. Finally, we have the list editor. The list editor provides you with a more technical view of the MIDI data in your events. This is very useful if you need to quickly make comparisons between individual note entries, or if you need a more text-based layout of all the notes entered so that you can view their start and end points, their notations used, or other available information. Think of it as a spreadsheet that can give you a quick overview of the entire MIDI event. As we've seen in the audio editing windows, many of the same features, tools, and layouts are found within the MIDI editors, making the transition from one editor to another very consistent. However, there are various important differences between each editor, and we'll go over these next in more detail. First, let's cover over the features that are similar across each editor, and then we'll focus on the tools that are specific to each one. Each editor has a wide selection of tools to choose from. Most of them we are already familiar with. Scissors, drawing, zoom, all these tools work the same across each editor. Each editor has a button to activate the ability to trigger the sound as you click or select individual notes. You also have the ability to enable quantization or snap modes when moving the data around. With the exception of the score editor, each editor has the familiar timeline and the ability to change time formats accordingly. This works in conjunction with the snap and quantize functions. Again, this creates a consistent method of editing and arranging the data that is exactly the same as you would do within the project editor or the sample audio editors. Now that we understand the common tools provided, let's take a look at what makes each editor unique. First, we'll start with the key editor. To the left, you have a full virtual keyboard that spans over 9 octaves. This keyboard can be used to trigger notes, and it also highlights itself whenever you select a specific note in the grid. Next to this is the main sequence grid, where all the data is contained. Here you can freely move around and edit any of the visible data just like you would in the main project editor. Resizing, slicing, copying, repeating, all the main functions are available to you for editing the data. Beneath the main sequencer grid, you have controller lanes. These allow you to see various pieces of controller information for each note entered. A drop-down list gives you the ability to choose what type of data you want to view. Once you choose the data type, then you can edit the data directly using any of the available tools. Using the Draw tool instantly lets you draw in new data. If you need to create smooth transitions, then you can use the line tool to create ramps or changes in the data. Notice that here the quantization snap mode also affects the resolution of the data that is created. A neat feature is the ability to add additional controller lanes. So if you need to see both velocity and volume data, you can click on the small plus symbol and a new lane is created. Now you can choose a different type of data to view within that lane. The score editor is probably the most complex of the three editors. It provides a means of editing your music using conventional notation. This editor is handy for two types of work. One, composing and basic editing for those individuals who are more comfortable working on a music staff rather than within a MIDI event window. And two, preparing written scores for your music for use by real musicians. Several unique options are available to you underneath the main editor toolbar. The Insert section on the left is used to add or change note values via note value buttons, as well as buttons to add dotted values or to insert tuples or triplets. Pushing one of these buttons will change the value of the highlighted note, or it will allow a new note to be entered via the mouse. The middle enharmonic shift buttons enable you to change notes to their enharmonic equivalents. Flat, double flat, sharp, and double sharp buttons are provided. The next group is the function buttons. The first of these is the information button that provides you details about the currently selected staff. Parameters for instrument names, quantized functions, staff type, key signatures, staff resizing, subgroup beaming rules, the means to turn accidentals on or off in the drum staves, and the guitar tablature controls are all included here. In addition to the info button, there are a number of other housekeeping and layout controls, such as the flip button, which flips the note stems to the opposite direction, and the grouping button, which puts the currently selected notes together into one stemmed group. There is a chord placement button that inserts chords into the score, and hide and show buttons, and a number of other layout controls. The layer controls on the far right provide the means to insert multiple parts on one staff. This is accomplished by highlighting one of the layer buttons and inserting or editing the score. The final group of controls are 9 checkboxes used to control the displayed view of several items such as bar handles, hidden notes, the layout tool, grouping controls, and others. The score submenu provides several functions. The mode toggles between page mode, used to view scores that will be printed, and edit mode, which is used to edit the score. The symbol palettes provide a series of floating palettes used to insert dynamics, notes, chord symbols, and more. The remaining menu items deal with score and template setup, including spacing issues, clef defaults, alignment controls, and a variety of other housekeeping items. Next, in the drum editor, we can already see some differences in the way this editor works. The two things unique to the drum editor is the instrument list to the left and the way you enter in and edit your notes. The instrument list is similar to the virtual keyboard in that it has an entry for every single note over the 9 octaves. However, instead of graphical keys, you are presented with a text list and name that is assigned to each note. This helps you visualize how your drum kit or percussion kit is set up and key mapped across your keyboard controller. You can even change the names in the list to match the sounds that you have in your drum kit. You can also change the quantized value per sound individually. In the grid editor, we now have diamonds that represent the notes entered. Think of these diamonds as a trigger or a drum hit for percussion editing. Trigger events are entered in by using the new drumstick tool. If you want to remove the trigger, you simply click on it again, and it disappears. The grid placement and grid values work the same as all the other editors, and is tied into the timeline and snap values. As in the key editor, you also have your controller lanes to view and edit data assigned to each trigger. Finally, in the list editor, we have a unique overview of all your MIDI events, provided to you in a list-like manner. To the left, you have your information list that shows you various bits of information for each note, such as start and end points, velocity, MIDI channels, and more. In the middle, you have a similar grid editor like that of the other MIDI editors, except that the information is placed out as a list, so you can see your notes from top to bottom, with the top notes being the first notes played and the bottom ones being last. This gives you a combined view of both the order of events and their place within the timeline. To the far right, you have one more display window that shows you information on velocity values for each note entered. So in closing, we've covered over the 4 main editors that Nuendo provides for editing your MIDI data. Each editor provides you a specific and unique way to view, analyze, and change what you've recorded via MIDI. Each editor is easily accessed and provides a common look and feel, making it easy to jump from one editor to another.